Hello, welcome to the Open Source Education Podcast. And I am your host, Precious. And if this is like your first episode, I just want to let you know that you should listen to the previous ones because most of what I will be talking about will build up on previous episodes. Also, I apologize for the long hiatus. Yeah, I will try my best to create a structure that helps me be a little bit more consistent. But in the meantime, we will talk about the topic that has made me stay very, this thing where you're in a situation where you're trying to get like things perfect, you're reading up on something, and you're just trying to make sure that, oh, I actually give out really good content. And like, I think I've read somewhere that that's sort of how your brain procrastinates. So, yeah, I just decided instead of stretching it out that long, I will work with what I have and we'll see how that goes. I'm not satisfied with it. I'll probably do like a part two. But so we're talking about open source licensing today. Something that I really, really like and I wanted to talk about for a very long time. So yes, first of all, let's try to define what licensing is generally. Then we can talk about open source licensing. So licensing is just literally like a legal mechanism that grants permission to users to use distribute and modify a piece of intellectual property under specified conditions, right? Personally, I think I would define licensing as literally what lets you do what you want to do and how you want to do it, and gives you the confines of how you can probably use your product or your actually intellectual property depending on whatever it is you've built, right? Or if it's what somebody else has built, it just lets you know how far you can go with it and how close you can go with it, right? And so for open source, it's a specific type of open source licensing is a specific type of software license that allows the source code to be free used, modified, and shared, right? So like there are two people to put into this context. There's the licensor and then the licensee. That's the person granting the license and the one that is receiving the license. So it promotes collaboration and sharing, enabling anyone to distribute or like to contribute to the principles of open source software while still maintaining that, right? And I think licensing is really important because it helps you know the legal implications of whatever thing you're doing. So if you have to like adopt a software to what you're building, it helps you know, oh, this is you can use this software in proprietary software, right? There are some open source tools that you can use and you can make your own software closed source. You adapt it. That works. If the licensing allows that, that's cool. But there are some that you cannot do that with, depending on the license that it's created with, and it just helps you know how to move so you don't get like lawsuits in the future. Creates protection, helps and protects the rights of the original creators while ensuring that the software remains freely available to the community. This is very important because most of the time people build open source software out of voluntary disposition. So I want to know that if I build something, somebody else from somewhere doesn't just come and take my stuff without proper due diligence. Collaboration helps foster collaboration by establishing guidelines for contribution and sharing, and avoids misuse of proprietary locking. Yeah, like I mentioned, when you can adapt an open source software to build proprietary software, but it has to be within the confines of whatever it is that the creator of the open source software has allowed. Also builds trust within the community because I know that if I contribute to something, my rights would still be valued and it's not going to be like disregarded. Right. So we have different types of licensing and discharging them. They have different definitions, right? And I think my favorite term, there's two types. There's copyleft. I really like that word. And then there's like permissive licenses, right? Permissive licenses are the ones that you can adapt and use for proprietary software. And copyleft are the ones that if they are used, it has to be open source, right? So I'm gonna give like a deeper definition of those words. So like also permissive. Permissive licensing is a type of open source software license that imposes minimal restrictions on how the software can be used, modified, and redistributed. It allows for software to be integrated into proprietary projects without the requirement to disclose the source code of the derivative work, right? So some of the key characteristics are allow software to be used in both open source and proprietary projects, minimal restrictions on redistribution and modification. Common examples include MIT license, Apache license 2.0, and BSD license. So what this means in general is that if you are using a tool that has permissive licensing, it means that if you decide that you want to make your stuff entirely proprietary, you're not obligated as in open source ecosystem to show us your source code, right? There's limited ways in how you can use or redistribute. If I decide I want my stuff to be closed source in quotes, that's proprietary, if I don't want everybody to have access to it, to like the source code, that works. It's fine, right? But for copyleft, it's the type of open source license that ensures that any derivative works of the software must also be distributed under the same license terms, right? So this means if the license term or whatever it is you are adapting into your product is strictly open source, you have to make sure that what you're building would also be strictly open source, right? So this means that if you modify or build upon the software, you must release your modifications under the same copyleft license, ensuring that the software and its derivatives remain open source. Key characteristics requires derivative works to be open source, right? That's like the main thing, and I think to an extent it can be quite restricting. Also ensures continued freedom and openness of the software. This is good because then we know that we're able to preserve the open source heritage, right? Because everybody can decide, oh, I want to build off Linux, and then before you know it, there's no everybody builds proprietary software on top of Linux, and then there is no like regeneration of open source software in the future, right? It just sort of ends after a while. So this licensing was really cool because it can help preserve open source software down the line. And then common examples include GNU. I think this is the very popular one. The GNU General Public License, the Affero Public License, and then there's another one, the Lesser General Public License. So I'm just going to give a few examples of some of these licenses I mentioned. Under the permissive license, you have MIT license. This is it allows users to do almost anything with the software as long as they include the original copyright and license notice. Then there's the Apache license 2.0, similar to the MIT license, where it includes provisions for patent rights and contributions. And then there's the BSD license. This is offers similar permissions to the MIT license with slight variations in terms and conditions. And then there is the some examples of the copyleft license is we have the GNU General Public License. It requires that any modified versions of the software will also be open source and distributed on the same license. And then for the Lesser General Public License, it's a more permissive version of the GPL, also used for libraries, allowing them to be linked with non-GPL software. As we mentioned before, GPL means General Public License. And then the Affero General Public License extends the GPL to cover software accessed over a network, ensuring modifications are shared with the community. Right. So some very popular examples of all these licenses mentioned. For the MIT license, we have React, we have Ruby on Rails, and then we have TensorFlow. That's the tool from Google. And then we have Apache, we have Hadoop, that's a data tool, and we have Elasticsearch. And then for BSD, we have PostgreSQL, and we have Django. I really like Django, and it's actually really cool to find out that Django is here. And then we have for the copyleft, the GNU General Public License is under the some of the examples are the Linux kernel, which a lot of really popular tools are built on, like Android and other distributions of Linux. And then we have WordPress, which was an interesting discovery. And now I actually want to, like, I'll probably be a little bit more, I'll be on the lookout to find all this software, because a lot of people use WordPress, yeah. And so that it would be really cool to find out people who are probably flouting this role. And then we have the lesser general current license, which is, some of the examples are the C library. Like I mentioned, most lesser GPLs are libraries, right? So we have the C library, and then we have the VLC Media Player. I'm pretty sure most people will be familiar with it. I like, it's a really cool tool that has like a lot of functionality and it's not paid, so like I really love it. And then we add some examples of the Affero General Public License is MongoDB on the Nextcloud. If you have done something around JavaScript, backend, Node, you should definitely, if you do anything with databases, really, you should have heard of MongoDB if you've not used it. And then another kind of license that is actually quite popular, but I found it very interesting that it wasn't boxed under permissive or copynet, is the Creative Commons license, right? I am pretty sure if you've played around with Wikipedia at some point, you've probably seen it. It's and the reason why it's not boxed under either of these two is apparently it's for creative software, like so it's like it generally falls on the category of content licenses, right, rather than software licenses, and it's designed for creative work such as text, images, videos, music, and other media, rather than software code. It just kind of makes sense on why some of the tools that are an example of it is Wikipedia, Flickr, and interestingly, TED Talks, because you can distribute them, but like they're not for sale and stuff, right? Yeah. And then how do you want to get a license? There are actually lots more examples. I have an example for licenses like Mozilla Public License, Eclipse Public License is version 1 and then version 2. And then under the Creative Commons license, there are a lot of other licenses. You have CC is Creative Commons. You have CC by attribution, CC by SA, that is attribution share alike, CC by ND, attribution no derives, CC by NC, attribution non-commercial, CC by NCSA, that's Creative Commons attribution non-commercial share alike, CC by NCND, that's attribution non-commercial non-derives. You should go Google and look up these things if you want to have like a more in-depth knowledge, but it's actually very interesting to see. And so you head me about, I want to know, okay, fine, I'm building open source software. How do I get my own license? First of all, you want to choose the license that you work with. If you're building a software, if you're building an open source product, I want to work with the assumption that you want it to be long term, at least for a while, or you are actually making room for the possibility that people want to adopt what you're building in their own software, especially if it's a really good functionality or like it solves a really important problem. So you want to choose your license that you know would work with your project's goals and philosophies. Do you want it to be open source throughout, like even the softwares that are built on it? Do you want it to continue being open source? Are you cool with proprietary software adapting it and not really wanting to keep it open source, right? So make sure that whatever license you build is aligning with your project's goals and philosophy. And you want to use resources like the Open Source Initiative for guidance. It has like a whole list. Oh my God, it's a lot. But yeah, if you should read on it very well and make sure that your choice is constructive and something you can live with for a very long time. So when you've done that, you want to add a license file to your project's root directory, including the full text of the chosen license. This is because when people come to your open source project, it has to be one of the first things that you see. It helps them know, okay, this is what I can adapt. It moves with what I'm looking for. The license doesn't really work with what I want to do. And so it just kind of helps them. So you don't have to like go through some kind of unnecessary legal battle later in the future. And then you want to include the license headers to the top of your source code files, specifying the chosen license and copyright information, right? So you've chosen your license by reading through the necessary resources. You've added your license file. Next thing is to include the license header. and then communicate your choice. Like, it should be as many places as it can be without obstructing what it is that you're building, right? Don't like make it so obstructing. But it's something that if I come to your page, I should see it. I'm pretty sure you've seen like the licensing for Wikipedia or open source tools that you used very visibly. It's really, really, really important, right? So you want to clearly communicate your chosen license in your project documentation and expository description. This is useful for people that will contribute to your community and even people that will hear about like stuff or want to use your product later. So 4 steps: choose your license, add a license file to your project, use root directory, include license headers, and communicate your choice to let everybody see clearly. That clear part is really, really important. So you've done all this, and then I think you can now like proceed. And with this goes without saying, but it should be one of the first things you do when you're still like planning out your project. So it's in the beginning stages, not like an afterthought, right? So it's really, really important to understand that your license is fundamental to both the growth and the distribution of your projects, because like I said, I'm pretty sure if you're building something, you're hoping that it stays for a while, and that you're also hoping that it will be so useful to people that they want to adopt it into their own project. So you want to make sure that whatever you build has the right structure from the beginning, so you don't have to go through unnecessary legal battles. There's some recent examples of that on like the internet, and with some popular projects not going ahead with the tools that they were adopted. So you want to make sure that that's things early. And so like open source licensing provides a framework for collaboration, protecting creators' rights, and ensuring that software remains free and available. When you choose the right license for your project, you foster a vibrant community, a healthy community, a community that feels trusted. You encourage contributions, and then you can maintain clarity so people know where they stand. And so whether you're using permissive licenses to maximize flexibility or copyleft licenses to ensure continued openness and the longevity of open source, it is a critical tool and an important factor to implement in your product, in your software tool. If you're building software, if you're writing, if you're probably making music, whatever it is, it's really, really important to make sure that it is out there. Actually, and this just goes, like I said, there's also the power of the licensing that doesn't really include software. But if you're writing stuff or making resources for that is crucial to open source, then it's important for you to implement the kind of licensing that you want for your work, for your intellectual property. And now, this means that I'm probably gonna have to pick the best license for myself. So take my advice now, so you don't be like me that realizes this when I've already started later. But yeah, it's really important for you. If you've not done it yet and you've already started, you should go do it now that you're done listening to this. So yeah, thank you for giving me your time, wherever you are. Good morning, good afternoon, good evening. If you're about to go to bed or whatever. Anyway, I thank you for giving me a few minutes of your time. And until next time, which hopefully sooner than later, I am Precious, and keep learning about open source. Bye.